As the current technology is more and more developed, many unsettled cases can be solved by technology, such as DNA identification, fingerprint analysis, and surveillance video now seen everywhere. But sometimes, even if the surveillance video captures the suspects, if you don't have keen insight, may not be able to solve the case successfully. Today we are going to talk about this case that happened in the United States, that need a high degree of keen insight to discover the truth. You can test to see if you have the potential to be a detective. It happened on July 28, 2008. A building in Los Angeles, USA. Surveillance video showed a woman walking into this building. After talking to the staff at the front desk, she entered one of the rooms in the building. After a while, this woman and another person walked out of the room. After hugging and saying goodbye to this person, she walked out of the building alone. Then she went into the elevator in the parking lot of the building. It was night at that time. And this is the last picture of this woman before being murdered. She was quickly found lying in the parking lot. People nearby immediately called the police when they heard her scream for help.
You have a male beating a female on the third level of the parking lot. Somebody might have seen across the street, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'm just waiting for my bus, and I happened to see this woman scream. But there's a whole crowd around the building right now.
The police arrived at the scene soon after being reported. Later, the police found that the woman in the parking lot on the third floor had been murdered. It didn't take long for the police to confirm the identity of this woman. Her name is Pamela Faye. Pamela and his husband James Faye opened a company called Golden Finger, mainly engaged in online gold trading business. When the crime happened, the company's annual turnover reaches $160 million. In addition to living in a luxurious villa, the two even bought a farm for their two daughters. It can be said that they are imitating families that many people envy. The police's inspection report showed Pamela received multiple attacks all over her body. She died because of losing too much blood. However, the LV bag, the cash, and several credit cards were not taken away. It can basically be concluded that it is not a robbery. So at this time a doubt arose. Who and why to kill Pamela? The police soon suspected Pamela's husband, quickly interrogate him after arrest.
Spell your first name for me.
Excuse me, James.
Spell it.
Jamen.
So you had no involvement with your wife's murder?
No.
Then can you explain to me why do you think somebody would want her dead? Can you explain to me why she was killed?
I don't know.
You don't know? Did she have enemies?
I don't know.
Although the police did not got any useful clues from James, but it also ruled out the possibility that James was the murderer. Because on the day of the incident, James says, he and Pamela went to the building for a meeting. After the meeting ended, they left separately. Surveillance video screen also showed that, when Pamela was killed, James was outside the building. If he was walking with Pamela at that time, may be able to prevent such a thing from happening. After checking the surveillance video of the parking lot, the police found that the murderer had left in a car, and the surveillance video also captured the license plate number. The police quickly found one of the suspects based on clues. And that person is Joey Moya. Moya works as an assistant at the company of Pamela. However, the police investigation found that he had a lot of cash in his home. How could that assistant have so much money? So the police deduced that Moya received the money and was commissioned by someone to kill Pamela. But Moya insisted on refusing to confess that who commissioned him to kill. After the police investigated the people Moya often contacted, they found out that James's sister, Mary, has a close relationship with Moya. Mary had organized her family elsewhere early. But when she knew that her brother became the boss, she chose to abandon her family and follow her brother. And James also let Mary work in his own company. But Mary was not satisfied with it. According to the former employee of Goldfinger, Mary is very jealous of Pamela's life, including the family and property owned by Pamela. More importantly, Mary and Moya are a couple. At the time of the incident, the car that Moya drove was also rented in Mary's name. So Mary definitely has the motive of committing the crime. In the end, the police arrested the man behind the scenes. But the police arrested Pamela's husband, James, not Mary. Because the police officer believed that James's motives for committing the crime were stronger. The police discovered that James's company Goldfinger had been under investigation by FBI a few months before the incident. Goldfinger is an online gold trading company, but FBI discovered that Goldfinger may not actually buy or sell gold, and is suspected of participating in money laundering activities. Pamela, who didn't know it at first, had persuaded him to stop when he discovered that James was laundering money, but James didn't listen to her advice at all. Then Pamela decided to place righteousness above family loyalty. She took the initiative to tell FBI that she could become a spy to assist in the investigation. James was of course very angry when he received the news that his wife wanted to betray him. If money laundering matters are exposed, James will definitely go to jail. So James definitely has a reason to instruct Moya to kill Pamela. And on the day of the incident, the two people went to the building not for a meeting, but for a divorce. So the relationship between the couple is not as close as the outsider thinks. However, James's defense lawyer insisted that James's sister, Mary, was the real man behind the scenes. He called a witness, James's second sister, Patricia. Patricia testified in court. 3 months before the incident, she suddenly received a call from her sister Mary, asking her to help her murder Pamela. After success, she will be given $200,000, but Patricia decisively refused Mary's request. So James's lawyer believed that Mary was because her sister refused her request. Instead, she asked her boyfriend, Moya, to help. And Mary is relying on her younger brother to lead a good life. If James and his company really have problems, he will naturally lose the wealth he currently enjoys. In order to maintain the current rich life, Mary's motives for committing crimes are also strong. Of course, Mary was also summoned to court, but in the face of various questions from lawyer James, Mary exercises the right to silence and does not answer all questions. On the day the court pronounced the verdict, the jury unanimously decided that James was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. In fact, the truth is hidden in the surveillance video on the day of the incident. Let's test and see if you can find. If you still don't find it, let's look at it again. Before watching this time, let me give you some hint. The parking lot where Pamela was murdered is only a short meter away from the square where James is. Are you ready? Now let's look at it again. I believe you have found it. The evidence is James's response to his wife's cry for help. When everyone heard Pamela's call, they all ran to watch. The only person on the scene who didn't respond to Pamela's call was James, and it was his wife's voice. The reaction is as if he knew his wife would yell for help. And this response made the police more certain. The man behind the scenes is James. But based on this evidence alone, the police still can't conclude that James is the mastermind. To convict him completely, James must confess himself. So the police arranged James's cellmate Smith as a spy and asked him to wear a hidden microphone to see if he could draw anything out of James's mouth.
She ran her mouth too much. She went out of control. She just started running her mouth.
Oh, she did?
Kept her mouth shut, yeah.
The court convicted James based on these evidences. As for the very suspicious Mary, although she also had a motive for committing the crime, there is no evidence to directly prove that she was involved. So the police didn't even arrest him. Since then, Mary has disappeared. Although James was sentenced to death, it has not been executed yet. That year, James's Goldfinger also closed down, and things finally came to an end. Thank you for watching.